Hi guys, and this is going to be a tutorial of the basic flight training which we'll be doing as a part of number 3 Squadron. So I'll be flying the Gloucester Gladiator Mark II for this example, and then later on I'll be using the Hawker Hurricane to do all the other ancillary bits at the end of it. So, the first thing you guys need to learn is the takeoff roll. The takeoff roll is pretty straightforward and standard. Consists of increasing the throttle gently, using the rudder to counteract the torque, keeping the aircraft on the ground as long as possible on the front two wheels if you can, and then gently pulling the aircraft into the air and then climbing away from the airfield. So we'll just get a crack on with that now. So I'm just going to fire the engine up on the Gladiator. There you go. So the engine's fired up, and we are now going to depart. So in this situation, the commanding officer of your flight will say blue or green, 1 taking off or rolling. Probably the correct term is rolling, but you can say taking off and we will know what it means. So I'm going to say blue 1 rolling, increase the power. I'm just going to try and keep the aircraft straight with the rudder pedals as best I can. I'm going to push the stick forward to get the nose, to get the tail up into the air, and I'm just going to keep it on the front two wheels until I have flying speed, which I do there, and I can gently pull the aircraft up into a climb to regain, to gain some altitude and safely away from the airfield. I didn't use any flap for that, that was all flapless, so I highly recommend that you don't use flap unless you are in a much heavier aircraft or have a payload on board. Okay, so the next part of basic flight training is the landing. So the landing will consist of a run-in and brake, followed by a downwind approach, followed by a final turn and the final touchdown, which I'll go through with you guys step by step as I'm going through. So the airfield is down here to my right, as you guys can see. That is RAF Hawking, if any of that don't know. And currently I am now at 180 knots and at Angels 2, so 2,000 feet. So now here I'm going to decrease the power to about 50% or 70% depending on how you feel. I'm just going to bring the aircraft in over the top of the runway which I intend to land on. So I intend to land on this runway here, as you can see. So it's the one with the sandbags at the end of the runway, which is the runway which we'll probably be using more RAF Hawking because it's the default runway, and it's pretty awesome to land next to each other. So we'll use this as our default runway. So I'm gonna level out over the runway, and I'm just gonna fly over it, still keeping good speed and good altitude. So once I reach the end of the runway, I will now pull the aircraft up into a climb, and I will rotate the aircraft round to the right to head to the high key position. At this point I'm going to release the angular bank. So at this current position I am now at the high key. This basically means that you are parallel with the end of the other runway, so the runway that you're landing on, the end of the runway, is a high key. So now I'm downwind, so at this point I'm going to call blue 1 downwind. And that basically tells the pilots around in my flight that I am now at this position and they know exactly where I am. Okay, so now we're at low key, so we're at the end of the runway, and at this point I'm going to start bringing the flaps down and gear down to get myself ready for landing, and then I'm going to turn right and be 90 degrees onto the runway. No call out is needed for this bit. And at this bit it's your own discretion of speed and altitude depending on how you feel about it. So as you turn right into the airfield, you will give a call out saying Blue 1, final. This basically tells the other pilots that you are now final approach to the runway, and it gives them a good understanding of where you are in relation to the circuit. At this point I'm now using the throttle and my stick movements to try and keep me on a gradual descent down to RAF Hawking, and at this point here I start to flare the aircraft, bringing it just a few feet above the ground, just decreasing speed, and there you go, touchdown. I highly recommend pulling as soon as you get down the ground, hold the stick back, as you can see down there, and then just gently taxi off the runway using using a rudder. I've just spun the aircraft there just to get myself to stop. Pretty simple. So there you go, that is a takeoff and a landing. I will now move on to the next stage, which is spinning and stalling, which is a little bit more advanced, but still pretty easy just if you do it step by step. Okay, so here we are now about to go through the stalls in the Gloucester Gladiator. There are three main stalls that we're going to cover. So the first one is the buffet stall. The second is the nose high stall. The third is the wing drop stall. So the difference between there is a slight difference between all three, but the recovery on all three is pretty much exactly the same. It's just the way you enter it that might be a little bit different. So the way buffer stall is done is by idling the power, pulling the stick back gently so your nose is a few degrees above the horizon, letting the airspeed die off and trying to keep the aircraft at that level of angle of attack. And then the aircraft should start to shake and shudder, and then eventually you will lose lift on the wings and the aircraft should naturally nose down. The recovery for this will be stick forward, regain flying speed, then apply throttle as you are pulling out the dive. So I'm now going to demonstrate this in the Gloucester Gladiator. So as you can see, I am now pulling the power back on my Gladiator with the nose up. You can see my airspeed dying off there, so my airspeed is dying and dying and dying. And I'm just going to hold the nose up, just gently pulling the stick back and just keeping it coming back, keeping it coming back. And I'm just going to hold it, hold it, hold it. My stick is now fully back, and there you go. So stick forward, build airspeed, pull out the dive, and then increase throttle. So that is the buffet stall. The next stall we are going to cover is the nose high stall. This one is a little bit more dangerous and much better in a combat environment if you want to have a quick way of just getting rid of someone on your 6. So this is the way you do this is pull the nose up to a high altitude, probably about 30 degrees plus. Idle the power. And literally just once again hold the nose there, hold the stick back, and the aircraft should naturally nose forward. Same recovery, so stick forward, regain flying speed, which I have there, pull out the dive, and then increase throttle once you have flying speed. The next one we're going to cover is the wing drop stall. So the wing drop stall is very similar to the nose high stall. Except the fact that when you are nose pitched up, you'll dip one of your wings, and this should cause the aircraft to wing drop once you enter the stall. This is quite dangerous, as it is a symptom that could cause the aircraft to spin. So just bear that in mind when doing it, and just try and practice it as best you can to try not to spin. So for this exercise, I'm now going to pull the aircraft back up and do the same procedure as the nose high. So bring a high angle of attack. Now I'm going to dip the wing out to the left, and I'm still going to fly it, I'm still going to fly it, still going to fly it, still going to fly it, and there you go. Aircraft goes down. So now what I'm going to do is hold the nose down. Now I'm going to correct my my roll, and then I'm going to pull up once again and pull out the dive with power. So that is me covering all 3 stalls. I will give you an external replay of all of these in a few seconds, so you guys can have a look what it should look like from the exterior. So moving on now, this is the spins I am now going to go through. So the spin is a controlled dive in which one of your wings is stalled and one of your wings is flying. This is what causes the rotation that you guys see when you spin. There are several different stages of the spin. You've got the ab initio spin, which is at the top, which is going into it. You have the established spin, which is when you're actually in the full rotations, and then you have the recovery. So the way you enter a spin is pretty straightforward. It's very similar to the wing drop stall, except the fact that you need to add back pressure into the stick. So in the wing drop stall, you are trying to not spin, and you're keeping the rudder straight and all that sort of stuff. But with the spin, you need to apply full rudder and pull the stick back to induce the spin. This gets the rotation going and stalls the inward wing. The recovery for this is full opposite rudder, so in the way of the spin. So if you are spinning right, you will use full left rudder, and if you are spinning right, spinning right, full left rudder, spinning left, full right rudder. So I'm now going to demonstrate this in War Thunder, so to give you guys an understanding. So here we are in the cockpit of the Gladiator, and I'm just going to now bring the power back, and I'm now going to bank the aircraft a little bit to the left. I'm going to do a spin to the left. So you can see my speed is dying. I'm now pitching the nose up a little bit. I'm kind of doing like a little bit of a buffet right now, keeping the aircraft going round, and now I'm going to add in left rudder and pull the stick back. The aircraft should now rotate into the spin, and it should now be established. Still rotating, so now I'm in the established spin, and now I'm going to put full opposite rudder in, and I'm going to keep the stick central. So my stick is now central, and I'm just applying the rudder. There you go. The aircraft has now recovered, so now I'm going to not touch the throttle, I'm just going to recover. And then once you are at a safe attitude, then you can apply throttle and pull out the dive. That in itself was a very easy spin to enter. Some spins that might occur is a spin while landing and a spin while in combat, which I will cover now. You do not need to know this for your training, but it is nice that you guys know exactly what to do if you get into that scenario. So let's say right now I am in a combat scenario. I'm dogfighting a BF-109. I'm turning in, and the overload of G and the increase of rudder snaps me into the spin. You can be at full throttle at this point, so you could have been at full throttle and it still would have gone into the spin. So the way you recover from this is idle power, full opposite rudder in the way of in the way out of the spin, and then centralize the stick. And there you go, recovered. Increase the throttle as I am now at a safe attitude. There you go. So that is the spin in combat scenario. With the higher load of G that you're putting onto the wings, this increases the stall speed. So at low speed, the stall speed will be much lower. So when you're not pulling any turns, the stall speed will be lower. But if you are pulling quite a few G's turn, the stall speed will be quite high in comparison. So now I'm going to do a spin whilst landing, or in preparation for landing. So I'm now decreasing my speed right now, and I'm going to deploy flaps. So just to give you guys an understanding of what it would look like. So I'm flaps down, and let's just say the runway is down to my right, and I'm just about to turn in to line up with the runway. And oh no, I've accidentally gone too slow, and the aircraft will go into spin. It will gently go into the spin because obviously you have flap out and it's pretty well. You have a lot of drag, but basically same recovery goes. You shouldn't lose as much height with the flap down and doing a landing one, but obviously at lower altitude it can be very dangerous as you don't have much altitude to recover. So just be careful when landing, making sure you have a good amount of speed and altitude for your descent, so that you don't enter the spin. Okay, so there you go, guys. That is the basic flight training for number 3 Squadron in the Gloucester Gladiator Mark II. Everything else from the basic flight training, including the maneuvers and the formations, I will cover that in the Awaka Hurricane Mark I late, as that aircraft is much easier to showcase what is going on. If you wish to practice all this stuff in the Gloucester Gladiator, feel free. Please contact either myself or Savage in order to get the server up and running for you guys to do some training and some hours of logging. So logging, you know what I mean. To log some hours onto the spreadsheet. I hope you guys found this helpful. If you have any more information about this sort of thing or want to know a little bit more, then please contact myself and I will happily go through this with you guys in the best possible way that I can. In terms of assessment for this, guys, so all the stuff I've covered is enough to graduate for the assessment, which either myself or Savage will be able to conduct with you guys. So you can do the training all by yourself or with another individual, but the assessment has to be done by myself or Savage. And basically, what it will take is we will spectate you in War Thunder, and we will make sure that you have the correct knowledge and flying ability to graduate onto the Gladiator Mark II to be able to fly in combat, as well as to start flying the Hurricane and training yourself up to the Hurricane and more advanced flying and combat.